Sound. All right.
Second episode.
Second.
Yeah.
All
Now
right.
we're including that, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Second episode.
Yeah. How do you feel?
No, I feel good, man. I feel good. You know, first episode was interesting. Very nice little debate that, and you know, we hope to continue the same vibes in this one, man.
Yeah. And we looked back at it. We thought it was actually. I mean, I didn't think it was that bad as a first episode.
Yeah, not too bad.
Definitely a lot of times we could have been more precise or concise. But we're actually interested if any of you guys that have watched the first one, watch this one, if you could tell us, you know, if we've improved, what ways, what things we keep on doing which are not that good.
No,
Be really interesting to know.
For sure, you know, as we said, you know, we want to be learning in the things that we're talking about, but also the process of creating a podcast as well.
For sure.
You know, we want to be getting better as time goes on, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah, through hard work and quite a few of these, we will. I'm certain of it.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, we might as well jump into what we're talking about.
Let's tell them
today.
what this one is about.
Yeah. It's going to be about fashion, you know, what fashion means to us, how our fashion senses have developed, you know, what the sort of motivations behind how you dress are, and if there's actually more going on than sort of meets to eye in that whole sort of realm. So, yeah, man, why don't you just start by telling us what fashion means to you, man?
I think you should start.
The
reason I say I think you should start is because you're more attentive towards. I still care about it, and you'll see that I care about it once we, you know. But I think you'd give it more justice as an initial introduction.
Yeah. And look, if anyone's, you know, looking, watching, I know I'm not dripped out right now. I'm not, you know, this is a standard, you know, comfy, normal day fit. If I'm stepping out, then it's a different story, you know what I mean? Like, so don't be in the comments saying this guy is a chatter, mate. Because I step out, I put stuff on, all right? But look, what does fashion mean to me? It's a lot of things. Look, it's a way to express yourself. It's a way to, you know, show people what you like. Sometimes what you think by way of the brands that you associate with. It's a creative outlet too. You know, we're all creative to some degree, and you know, when you're putting together different pieces, putting together things that, you know, people may not have seen before, that may be pushing little boundaries. Yeah. That can be something that taps into creativity like not many other things can. I think another thing that fashion does, it gives you a way of letting people, it lets you control to a degree how people perceive you.
First impression,
man. And first impression is most important, you know.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, you know, what people dress, how people dress, you know, we look at that and it means something.
You stole my first point because I agree with everything you said, but of course there are layers. There's more to it. I think it's a responsibility to some degree, you know, especially when you work for someone else or you represent a certain company or family or anything. I think, you know, there's a lot of people that see it as just whatever, you know. I always used to remember, like, either people in school or just at first early stages of work complaining about that we have to dress in certain ways, that we can't have hair cut in a certain way and everything like that. I don't agree with it completely, but I agree with it to a sense because it's a responsibility.
I do actually really like that you said responsibility, because I think because fashion's so, or not fashion, the things that you wear are so intertwined with like tradition and sort of society and also like different activities, it basically means that it's more than, as you said, than just putting something on. Like everything that you wear and the way you do it, it says something, you know. Why in schools do you have to tuck your shirt in? As you said, haircuts, all of these things, like it is about expressing yourself too, but then there's so much more that it says. It can actually bring people together in a sense, you know. people are so proud of the different clothes that they wear.
All the same.
You know, or the same, or the same. You know, it can bring people together. You know, if you've ever gone to a drop for a clothing brand, oftentimes you can talk to people in the line really well. You know, because
You're queuing up outside
yeah.
those Supreme drops for years, weren't you?
Hey, listen, I was a reset. No, to be fair. I do remember one pair of Jordans that I queued up for, Space Jams, 11s, and the whole community, man. Everyone was out there just vibing. We were there for like 4 hours waiting in the cold, man. This is like November time, 2016 or something. And it was beautiful, man. We connected over that. And you know, I find it hard to find things that can bring just diverse groups together in such a way.
It tends to be the more creative. It tends
True.
to be, you know, music. It tends to be art.
True.
It tends to be fashion.
True.
It does tend to be those things, and I guess it's because it speaks to the almost extroverted sides of personalities that certain people will have. That
It's the expressive side that it speaks to.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're always looking for different ways to express ourselves. You know, whether that's just talking, whether that's posting online, you know, whether it's drawing or making art, this and that, or, you know, cooking, even doing just channeling that creativity in some way. You know, you've got to let that out, and
yeah. And I guess the only other thing I would add to fashion is that it's also a cloak to hide behind. You can hide behind fashion to represent an image that you want to portray, although you don't really, you know, don't really suit that image, or it doesn't really speak to your real personality. And you can do that out of convenience. You know, there are times where you have to do that, and you can also do that almost out of fear to a certain degree. You know. I think London in general is a good example of that, because everyone tends to dress in a darker, almost more intimidating way, right? And I think it is to push this hard persona, right? Big man and all of that. And I mean, I do it. It's ingrained in me now. I also kind of enjoy it. You know, I don't really like many colors, anything like that. So but as I was younger, it was definitely to you know, to represent that kind of.
That's an interesting point. You know, I actually do like that. I mean, I think that's a side of dressing that people will just never think about. I mean, everyone wants to look at it from the happy side of, you know, you're expressing yourself, but so many people actually don't express themselves through their fashion, you know, because, you know, they're following trends, and there's so much influence from the outside, and you might actually like something, but you might not wear it because you'll be mocked, or
that used to happen in school every time. But you know, to me, that I look back at it and I laugh. Like sometimes people took the mick out of my shoes, and sometimes me and my friends took the mick out of each other's shoes, and it was back and forth. But I look back at those times with laughter, right?
No, for sure.
It also comes from a person that doesn't really care too much about expressing themselves through fashion. If I cared more and felt like I was pressured into dressing in a certain way that I couldn't dress the way I really wanted to, then I can understand it affects you more negatively than it did me.
I mean, honestly, like, I look at it like this, because there's a lot of different ways you can express yourself. I just think that fashion is a really accessible way to do it, because, and by that I mean this, like, unless you're just getting like designer or purposely buying expensive clothes, you know, a lot of fashion isn't like, you know, it's not that expensive. Like, you can dress in the way you want.
You can also buy designer secondhand for
you know what I mean.
Prices.
You know what I mean. So it's an accessible way of expressing yourself. But true, it's not the only way. It's not the only way. And I don't instantly sort of look at someone in a certain way for not choosing to take fashion that seriously.
So what do you think about people that completely disregard it, that even claim for it to be almost a waste of time?
I mean, I think it's naive. I think it's because it's not a complete waste of time. Like, whether you like it or not, the way that you look has an effect on other people. It's a tool it's a tool that you can use to somewhat control how other people perceive you, and that is something that is important in life. Like you want people, like there is a benefit for if you go into a business meeting for them to think of you in a certain way when you walk into that room,
Yeah.
and that's going to be on how you walk, how you shake the hand, but also how you dress. Like there is a benefit of when you go on a date with a girl, dressing in a way that she might think is fashionable, that might signal, and this is shallow, right? But things like wealth or the way that you'd be able to take care of her, there's obviously a benefit to that. So for you to say there's,
Or just level of seriousness and
yeah,
everything.
yeah, it's like, and also if you, people that don't care, I just think that
They're just
no
saying it.
one really doesn't care.
Yeah, I
I feel
agree.
because you have to be, because that's against humans, right? That's against human nature to not care. I mean, if you go right back to cavemen, it's social hierarchies, it's status,
It's not even just, it's just
on.
animal nature.
It's animal nature, and like clothing and your fashion is a huge signal in today's world of your status or different things like that,
Your
which
background,
you know.
everything.
So if you're gonna say you don't care about that, it just doesn't really make too much sense in my head, you know.
I mean, I agree. Um, I also think, actually, I don't want to go into this yet, but I'll bring it up in a second.
Cool.
I agree with you. I think people who say that it's completely irrelevant, I don't believe them because they will dress in a way they feel they have to dress in a moment that they're in.
Yeah.
If they don't, then I think they're just playing the game of life wrong to a certain degree, right? I could be proven wrong as well. That's fair enough. But I want to go into another thing, which is a lot of people claim to have a fashion sense
Yeah.
because they wear clothes that they feel are fashionable, right?
Okay.
Where I was brought up, those clothes are not deemed as fashionable. I don't think I can't claim to have a fashion sense. When I go back home in Italy and I sit around some of my dad's cousins and brothers and my dad himself, like I look at them and I think, if I wore the same thing, I wouldn't look the same. It's a weird thing to say, right? But I just wouldn't carry the clothing in the same manner. I wouldn't carry it as elegantly, as professionally as they do. And I usually go back around Christmas and these times, so more serious occasions. But how much of fashion do you think is subjective? Because if you say all of it is subjective and it's a personal thing, then I disagree with you. But I'm interested to know how.
So it's up until a point, like mentioned like before, that fashion is intertwined with things like society, cultural norms, tradition, right? So now there's no real sort of objectivity to these things, but over time there's become expected standards and just expected reactions to certain things that you may wear in particular cultures, right? And that in a sense, and these sort of, let's call them sort of fashion standards, right? Like these are real things that like can't really be ignored, and if you sort of do ignore them, they're going to get you in more trouble than not. If you're going to say that.
But do you think they are standards for an objective reason? Or do you think they're standards because it was someone's idea at first and gradually through the years it just became the standard?
I think you've got examples of both.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think that the ones that are really hard to break are the ones that have gone through time. Because I don't know. It's just it's hard to break human culture. It's hard to break. But at the end of the day, though, I had mentioned before that fashion isn't like the only sort of way to express yourself. If someone, so like you can put less value on fashion as an individual, and that is fair. For some people, that level of, I don't want to say judgment, because that sounds wrong. I'm never going to judge someone for wearing something, really. But
I think you should.
you think so?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
It's their choice to represent a certain image, and if that image comes across, I think you can. It depends what you mean by judge. If like you're looking down at them and feeling a very negative way
Or
towards
form a
them,
perception, or like start
I
forming.
think,
Yeah.
I think they're giving, by dressing in that way, they're giving you the right to do so.
Yeah.
I don't want, if I dress in a specific way, right? First of all, it's because it's for other people's eyes. So, I don't believe in I dress for myself. This is going to be another discussion, but I only dress for myself. I don't care what other people think. If that's what you're saying, then you just don't, in my opinion, don't really understand how it works.
Yeah.
You dress for other people. Those are the people that are looking you everywhere you walk.
Yeah.
You don't look at yourself when you walk. And if you dress in that specific way, you're allowing someone to think certain things of you.
Yeah.
And at that point,
it's not effective. It might actually be true for some people, but it's not really an effective way.
yeah, but it's your responsibility initially to dress the way you want to dress.
Okay.
As soon as you dress, I think you forfeit the ability to say you can't have, this idea of me just because I'm dressed this way. Just because I've got my hair cut this way. As soon as you do, you represent an image.
Yeah.
And as soon as you choose to represent that image, you can be.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's no point being naive.
Yeah.
And things signal different things, man. Whether you like it or not. Sagging your trousers, all right, not to the extent it used to, but it has connotations of just gang stuff, or or just lower class. Unfortunately, I still sag my trousers, but it is what it is.
I mean,
if you're wearing crop tops and that as a girl, unfortunately, it's not as bad as it once was, but unfortunately, to certain people, that's gonna signal negative stuff towards you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we can't be naive about these things.
Definitely can't be. And I like to stress the fact that it's not unfair, right? A lot of people deem it to be unfair. I don't think it's...
Why do you not think it's unfair?
Because there are so many things in the world that are unfair, that if you boil it down to, it's unfair that, I've been stopped and searched by the police, right? And I was wearing a hood and a tracksuit, right? If I stopped there and I was like, oh, it's unfair that I've been stopped and searched, I haven't done anything. Then no. I disagree. It's unfair when you take everything, when you choose to act and dress and behave in all the proper manners, and then things that shouldn't happen to you still happen to you, right? If I dressed in a full suit...
Ooh, so not to interrupt you, but so you have, because you've just said proper manners, innit?
Yeah.
And obviously we talked about fashion standards before. So obviously you would ask me the question of whether fashion's subjective, but do you agree that there's like objective ways to do things?
It's hard for me. I think there are objective ways to do things, but it's also been built through my tradition and my culture and growing up in Italy, and my dad is very harsh about certain things, and now I'm harsh about them. Right?
Yeah.
Even the minute details. I still say that I'm not fashionable in that sense. I still don't understand it fully. I really want to. I haven't put too much effort towards it, so I can't complain about not understanding it yet. But I do want to understand it deeper. And if you think about Italian fashion, it's been hundreds of years that it's been, refined, year in, year out. And also when you look at the bigger brands, they're now unfortunately not as Italian as they used to be. They're owned by bigger corporations that are either multinational, lots of them in France, who hire creative directors and other people within the brand that don't look at the traditional values that the brands were built upon. Armani is the easiest example of them, right?
Yeah.
Owned by LVMH, actually not owned by L'Oreal, I think, yes, which of course is an Italian brand. But I think it is objective. I think there are things that have been, it's like traditional recipes, and people will disagree with me simply because they're not traditional people. They don't like traditional things. They like, newer styles. But one thing that I think is objective that's been kind of lost is quality, because fashion to these days is about the way it looks as opposed to what something is, right?
Yeah.
It's very similar to food in the sense that a lot of people think and I'm not saying that they're wrong, I'm saying that I think differently, that good food means good tasting food, as opposed to food that tastes good but also has great ingredients behind it.
Yeah.
Fashion used to be, you used to buy a pair of shoes and you could wear them for 30 years. Now we buy a pair of Nike shoes and they last 2 years and we have to rebuy them. And, you know, I think when it comes to the objective side of fashion, it's understanding what a great piece of attire is.
Yeah.
That can be used throughout the years, that can be applied in different manners. And those things I'm yet to discover.
That's interesting, man. It's very interesting that you say quality, and I agree with a lot of what you just said, actually. But it's very true that desire for quality really isn't. It's not something that, like, for example, if I see someone that looks fashionable, they're not in high quality clothes, I'm still probably gonna sort of look at that situation in a positive light.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. Because to me, that's one of the reasons why I say that I don't really understand much about fashion. And it's because, along with the component about the fashion that we were talking about before in terms of how you look, which I still think is something that I just don't know that much about, the component of the quality part of it is something that I really don't understand about. Obviously, I can kind of tell what a better leather, obviously real and fake leather, those things, but to a higher degree. And going back to the brand point, that's what brands have lost over the years. You know, Armani, I've got some of my granddad's old clothing, right, from Armani, which was, you know, top suits, Giorgio Armani, like the highest of quality, and looked incredibly sleek.
Yeah.
Giorgio Armani still makes a lot of stuff like that, but the brand has divulged into this Armani exchange and T-shirts and sliders and all of this. Again, because they're profitable, they've got shareholders that want to profit maximize. But yeah,
There's something that's been lost there.
there's a lot that's been lost, and a lot that we've been fed growing up,
And
which isn't.
which doesn't, so, because I think that what's happened is that the sort of thinking around fashion has shifted, right? But before, it was essentially a better system than it is now. And I 100% agree with that. Fast fashion, like, just some of the movements that we're seeing nowadays, just the fact that so much of it is about making a statement now. And I think we really have, unfortunately, moved from internally driven fashion senses, or where the internal and how you feel and what it's actually doing for you mattered. I feel like we've gone from a more predominantly internally driven to much more externally driven, which is why we're allowing things like quality to not be a big factor in the clothing decisions we're making for people in general. And that is sad, and that's something that honestly I hadn't thought about, but you look back at it and that's definitely true, man. That's definitely true.
This is an assumption based on what I've seen my granddad's wardrobe, and also my dad, but my dad less so because he's part of this culture a little bit more, right? I didn't find anything that I felt was like bad quality. It's also the fact that bad quality might have been thrown out, right?
Okay, yeah.
But just what I remember of him, it was to hold a high standard of these type of things, right?
Yeah.
Which has been lost and replaced exactly by what you said, which is representing I think you now buy Armani to represent the brand Armani is and the social status, the same with all the top brands. At the time, you used to buy Armani or Gucci because they produce the best products.
Yeah.
And of course, they produced the best products, which represented a higher class that a lot of people aspire to, like my granddad.
Yeah.
But they both came together as they kind of logically should, right?
No, for sure. That's interesting, man. And so we now live in a society where so much sort of, especially in young people, but so much weighs on what you're wearing. So much can be signaled through the clothing decisions that you've made. One thing that I wanted to bring up though was this. Why do you tend to get older people not caring as much about what they wear? And they do care, but as in like there's much less dressing for other people, I'd say, as you get older. I have an idea for why this is, but why do you think that exists generally?
Off the top of my head, I think it's two things. The first of all is the natural biological thing of wanting to attract.
Okay,
You know,
okay, that's fair.
I mean, you want to attract the opposite sex,
Yeah.
and you know, clothing does a lot for that. And once you grow older, you don't have that ambition anymore. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet that that's a big thing. The second thing is that I think that they've developed their image, and they've gone through the years, and they have a reputation which is theirs, and it's probably just now they don't have to dress to portray an image that they were maybe chasing before. Now it's them. Now it's whatever they do, they're always going to be remembered and thought of as the person that they were.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point.
Did you have anything that was different?
I mean, my point was sort of linked to the one you made. Not so much that their image is already created, because I think the image.
What age are you speaking?
I mean, just like how people perceive you, just things like that. Like,
no, but I mean when you say older people.
I'm talking about like middle age plus.
Oh no, I was thinking like.
Oh, you're talking
70s.
about 70. But I mean, all right, the point that I'll make still stands. It's basically just this. I mean, as you get older in life, the ability for clothing to be a signal of how much you're actually sort of worth or your status just decreases, because when you're middle aged, right, you can probably buy a £500, £1,000 item of clothing, and it's not going to ruin your life, or it's not going to do anything. Really, you know, you're buying cars, you're buying houses, then you're making investments then. And so in comparison to when you're young, and when a purchase like that is a lot more sort of able to show that maybe you have disposable income, or is a lot more reflective of your whole financial situation. I think it's a lot more. I think that for older people, it just matters less.
Yeah, I mean,
it
relative
tells you
expenditure.
less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And so then, like, there's less of an incentive to really even sort of take it as seriously.
That's where I think you're accurate when you talk about the brands that we chase as we're younger. I think and again, I'm just thinking about people around me in my life, the seeking for quality and a specific brand because it meets your specific expectations remains. It's not as if, you know, my mom or my dad who buy from a brand are suddenly like, oh yeah, now we don't care, we'll just start buying from Primark. That remains, at least in my case, from my experience. But yeah, there isn't the excitement around buying, you know, the new shoes from this brand or whatever. I think for most people, there will definitely be people who still deeply care about it.
Priorities just shift, man. Priorities shift. But I still think, even though on an individual scale or in an individual sense, that clothing decision making whole process isn't as important. Maybe it's just because I'm young. I think it's still.
No, I think
it still does matters though, and I think it still matters.
I think it matters. Yeah, I think it matters as well. I don't think there's anything about it that doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah.
I think we have to caveat to what we think. Why do people dress? Do they dress for themselves? Do they dress to impress?
Yeah,
outside?
I mean, all in all, all in all, I think it's a mixture of things, you know. I mean, we've already said that it can signal things about your identity, helps you explore yourself, helps you explore your creativity, release that creativity. But it also helps you create an image of yourself and get certain types of attraction or make certain statements that might benefit you socially or in other ways, right? So there's a lot of motivations flying around the place when it comes to what you dress, and so I don't think it's not as easy to say it's one or the other.
Definitely not.
It's a mixture.
I would heavily lean on the side that you dress for other people.
Yeah, yeah. Because in reality,
which in turn goes back to you, of course. But it's for other people to look at you. It's not for you to look at yourself.
And honestly, it's interesting because I just thought of something. The internal sort of benefit that you get from, like, you know, buying clothing, you know, that wears off very quickly. But you know that external effect that, you know, you're being perceived in a certain way is gonna last. And so, for me, I definitely do think with certain things, I probably do think more about, okay, what's this gonna say about me?
I mean, I think people find it hard to admit because you're essentially it's linked to an ego. It's linked to like a connotation of just self.
You're basically admitting that you're somewhat shallow.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but also, what's the word for when you only care about yourself?
What, self-centered?
Yeah, to some extent. Those sorts of words float around the idea that if you buy clothing for other people. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to turn this into another debate, but I've had a conversation with some, they tend to be girls who, if you were to question them about their attire, they would say that they dress for themselves. they dress for themselves, and it's also guys. It just tends to be from my experience, it tends to be more about the girls, and I think you're doing yourself a big disservice by lying about it. I think I think you can say that by dressing in a way so that people perceive a certain image of you, right? Then you internally feel better. Yeah. But that wouldn't happen unless you cared about the way people look at you. So I think it boils down to that. And realistically, if either one of us or any one of us and any of the girls that I mentioned, I can't speak for them, but I think if we were deserted by ourselves in any place in the world and we were by ourselves, we wouldn't wear tracksuits when, you know, we have to, I don't know, climb a mountain, or in specific environments. You wouldn't wear heels when it's cold. You wouldn't. You would wear what makes sense in the moment due to the environment, or you might not even wear anything at all. And I think the argument of I dress for myself in this particular way suddenly goes out the window.
It's a weak argument, man. And it's one that, like, it doesn't make sense because it's easy to poke holes in as well.
Yeah. But the other thing is that if you approach, and if you think about the conversation the way we have about all the different reasons, right? The fact that it's a responsibility, the first impression, the overall impression, it makes sense that it's not about you. It's not about, you know, it's normal, and it's completely fine that it's about the perception that you get, and it's about how you want people to look at you.
Yeah. I mean, it actually makes me think of this. Like, the responsibility thing has come through. You know, we have to be really clear about that, because what you wear doesn't just affect you. Yeah, maybe it's your favorite way of expressing you, but everyone has to see it, or other people have to see it. And the way you dress not only represents you, but represents all your groups that you affiliate with, whether it's your family, your school, your workplace, your team, whatever it is. People your age that live in your area, you know, like, so you've got a responsibility, you know, and
unfortunately most people throw away that responsibility. And then if something happens, they say it's unfair. Like I was saying before, right?
No, for sure. For sure.
But I think we're completely aligned, and I'm excited to hear some comments saying no, you're wrong because of this. I really wanna be tested on this.
No, for sure. Please, if you dress for yourself and yourself only, let us know.
Yeah,
I bet you don't. But I guess that's been the second episode.
and can we just say that, like, we also used to think that we used to dress for ourselves, and because we try and not have an ego, we try to remove that. We're able to kind of go back on what we used to think and what we used to say and what we still think and say. And if you defend it, if you're like, no, it's not true because blah 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 blah. If you really put a lot of pressure on it, then and you don't remain open. It's very hard to sit back and be like, maybe what was said was true. So.
I think, and I don't want to just extend the convo, but I think when you really look at like why you do a lot of the things you do, it's more than just this. It's never really just an internal thing, man. It's very rarely just purely a decision where you're considering yourself and yourself only. For so many of these things, there are external factors that you should be aware of. Don't kid yourself about them. It's going to make dressing easier anyway.
Yeah.
Like if you're just honest with yourself that, right, I want to come through and I want to seem like, I want to portray this. Yeah, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you're fake. It doesn't mean that you're
realer than the people who don't.
Yeah, it's a reality of the world that we live in, and so be aware of it and just take advantage.
Take responsibility and take advantage of it.
That's it.
I think you'll be better off every time.
For sure.
And you'll know how to manage situations differently when, if you're aware of the image that you portray, you're very consciously aware. You might not dress in certain ways for certain scenarios, and it might prevent situations that you wouldn't like. So,
I mean, and this is definitely the last thing I'll say, but I don't want this to come across as you've got responsibility, and so it will get in the way of your creativity. Nah, obviously still dress how you want, like do what you want, but there's more at play than just how you feel.
Yeah,
I'd say, but be creative though.
Yeah, just find the balance, and then also, if you dress the way for a specific situation you shouldn't have dressed for, you can't sit back and say it was unfair because they looked at me this way. I think you can say it's unfair. Maybe you still can't, but you're more entitled to saying it's unfair when you put yourself in the best scenario, and then the thing you were trying to avoid still happens. If I go to an interview and I go in a t-shirt and I hear, I'm sorry, but the way you dress, blah blah blah, I can't sit back and be like, I can't believe this company looks at me this way. If I go in a shirt and tie, suddenly I don't have any of these little things to lean on as excuses, and it just puts you in a better place every time.
No, for sure, man.
I think that's
I
think that's it for the second.
Yeah, I think that's it. Well, thank you for watching. Again, get in the comments, let us know what you think, and thank you for watching and or listening to second episode of Layers Podcast.